Here we go with another edition of Sports Medicine Weekly on this Saturday morning. Thanks so much for being with us, everybody. I'm Steve Kashul, Chicago Bulls radio host, joined this week again by Dr. Greg Nicholson. He is a orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist from Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, filling in again for Dr. Brian Cole. He works with the Chicago Bulls, Chicago White Sox, also the Chicago Dogs minor league baseball team, amongst other teams and college athletic programs. And Dr. Nicholson, thanks for being with us again.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me.
I forgot to ask you last week, we had the Chicago Sports Summit back on October 3rd at the Hyatt Regency. I got the nice pleasure of having a nice crew with me, including Mike Adamley and Jack O'Callahan and Matt Forte. We had a lot of fun, and I know you did as well.
Yeah, it was a great event. We had some of the GMs from Chicago, Rick Hahn, Mike Reinsdorf, talking about what is the view, from the top level down to the grassroots in Chicago. How do the fans interact? We did a great segment on women in sports, a whole panel of gold medal Olympians, and what they see as the future and what the issues are going forward in women's athletics. So it was a great event.
Yeah, we invite you next year. It's always usually that first Wednesday or so in October, Chicago Sports Summit, and getting bigger and better. It's the second one I attended and got to be one of the moderators and had a great time put on by Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. We're going to dive right into this show, Dr. Nicholson, and get someone on that is really interesting here. The founder and CEO of Chicago Dance Therapy. Let's bring on Erica Hornthal. And Erica, thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly. I read about this, and so we had to get you on. The power of dance for people with Parkinson's. And wow, Parkinson's disease, Dr. Nicholson. It really it hit home for me. My dad had it before he passed away earlier this year, and so I'm familiar with that. But it's interesting how Erica is helping a lot of people out there.
It's a disease that affects all systems of the body, and obviously the most obvious is the musculoskeletal system with movement disorder. And the issue about Parkinson's, as you well know, Steve, is it can affect different parts of the body different ways. It can be very severe. It can be very subtle. And there's a tremendous amount of research and treatment going on. And this is I'm extremely interested because in my shoulder and elbow world, the upper extremity is so key in Parkinson's to keep that functionality going on, the ability to just grab a glass of water or to write, to type, to drive, those kind of things. So,
absolutely. Erica, thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly. Let me begin with this. What is dance movement therapy all about?
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a pleasure and a passion of mine to talk about dance therapy and obviously to talk about it with movement disorders like Parkinson's disease. So dance movement therapy is a psychotherapy that uses movement really as the primary form of observation, assessment, even intervention within that therapeutic relationship. So it can be dance, but it's so much more than that. It's about utilizing and being aware of our bodies as we are going through life, talking about circumstances, or trying to deal with things like mental health.
How is it different than a dance class?
So dance classes typically take the form of instruction. Somebody may be suggesting movements or even showing us what's supposed to be done. And in movement therapy, I should say most, if not all, movement actually comes from our participants, comes from our clients. So in the context of somebody with Parkinson's or a movement disorder, the movements may be small, they may be confined, they may be more rigid, and we find that meeting somebody where they are allows them to move through that, as opposed to perhaps feeling a lot of the mental or emotional complications that come up with changes in our movement patterns, or feeling like we can't do things the way we used to. Other things that may come to mind are dance classes usually take a certain skill set or a technique. The word dance can be kind of loaded. Oftentimes people feel like they can't dance, or they have two left feet. Again, if we look at dance in terms of movement therapy as movement, and how we move through life, especially after we're diagnosed with something like a movement disorder, it really opens up the possibilities.
So let me now correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds as if, a dance therapy class, like you're saying, would say, okay, patient, I want you to master this or do that. But what it sounds like what you're saying is, hey, whatever your movement is, whatever you're doing, let's enhance that. And so they're not afraid of failing into, like you said, 2 left feet or a dance move that they can't do, but we're maximizing their ability for what they can do. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Another piece of movement therapy is it's dealing with that mind-body connection. My mind may be thinking one thing while my body is doing another, or vice versa. It's also dealing with the mental aspect of what happens while we're dealing with a diagnosis, through the diagnosis, or just while we are witnessing the changes that our body is taking, and what role that plays on our mental health, having to sit with or, notice how my body is moving differently can take on, people express a lot of grief, anger, all of these emotions that come with the diagnosis, specifically with a movement disorder. What movement therapy allows somebody to do is to be present to those emotions as well as the body changes that are happening. So it may allow them to move freer or to embrace more movement because they're able to, in a sense, relax. When we are dealing with something very heavy, it causes tension in the body. So if we can try to relax some of that tension, we can get some more movement out of our muscles, out of our bodies. So we're really trying to play with that balance of mental health and physical health. Within the context of dance, it may be about getting a certain dance move out of it, but it's really trying to meet the person behind the movement, not just the movement itself.
We're visiting with the founder and CEO of Chicago Dance Therapy, Erica Hornthal. Steve Kashul here with Dr. Greg Nicholson filling in this week for Dr. Brian Cole. It's Sports Medicine Weekly on this Saturday morning. And wrapping it up with Erica, your website is chicagodancetherapy.com. Want to ask you this because we kind of led in with this as well. How does dance therapy help somebody with Parkinson's disease?
So time and time again, when I am working with an individual that has Parkinson's, the movement therapy not only allows for a release, maybe of tension or just an acceptance in the body, which then allows the body to move a little bit more freely, but that mental health aspect where somebody feels empowered or in control over their movements when they feel, out of control most of the time. Finding some self-awareness, self-esteem, confidence, and I think mostly finding a voice, whether your symptoms affect your voice, whether your voice is a part of the symptoms, or just being able to stand up for yourself and kind of run your life. Oftentimes that changes with a diagnosis, and finding your voice through your body is so empowering for our clients that they come in thinking that they're going to learn a dance move or, a type of dance, and they leave actually feeling a new sense of self, a new sense of confidence that they didn't have before.
Great stuff. Hey, Erica, appreciate everything you do, and we appreciate you joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly.
Thank you for having me.
Up next here on Sports Medicine Weekly, we're going to talk about training in thin air with low oxygen and climbing in high altitude. So stay with us, Sports Medicine Weekly on 670 The Score.